Everything starts in a game where a nearly defeated dark boss mocks his opponent's strength. At that moment, we see several adventurers fallen on the ground after failing countless times in their attempt to defeat the monster. With this, the battered warrior leans on his sword, being the only one left standing in the arena. But even in this state, he smiles and comments that this was expected from the final challenge. Then the player decides he will win to reach the maximum level and become the strongest of all. At this moment, he faces the gigantic beast, knowing that victory would bring a great reward. With his flaming sword, the young man charges, seeking the ultimate power to change his family's destiny. Thus, he leaps toward the giant monster, delivering a powerful flaming strike. He states with great confidence that if the monster is the strongest boss, then he is the supreme player. Suddenly, a sharp beam of light pierces the air, hitting the enemy head on with an attack of total annihilation. The flash destroys the creature, and the system finally announces the defeat of the boss, soon calculating the rewards. With this, the hero falls to the ground completely exhausted, while celebrating that he finally achieved his long-awaited victory. But suddenly, one of the mages from the group, who had fallen, simply stands up as if nothing had happened. At that moment, the guy gives a sinister smile and soon congratulates his companion for the excellent hard work. The armored young man is in shock and soon wonders if his ally was just pretending to be defeated. Then the traitor prepares a dark magic, warning that it was now too late to realize the plan. With this, the cowardly mage pulls all the items and riches that dropped from the boss to himself, keeping everything. Suddenly, several red beams strike the warrior's body, causing an absurd amount of damage in a completely unexpected way. He becomes completely furious at the betrayal and asks what on earth that fake friend was doing there. The poor guy asks if they weren't a team, while the scoundrel turns his back, mocking that simple word. Then the traitor mocks him, asking if Trash from the Hoda family would ever be his equal, and tells him to stop dreaming. At this, the dark mage shows off all his intact power and questions how the nearly defeated young man intended to fight. With great difficulty, the injured hero tries to stay on his feet, stating that he wouldn't let things end like this. He shouts with all his fury, swearing that he would make the villain regret it and that he would definitely return for payback. But the enemy laughs, revealing that he hired goons to take out the young man's entire family at that very moment. The poor guy falls into total despair upon hearing this horrible news, unable to believe what was happening. At this moment, the system starts glitching completely, forcing the game to disconnect and cutting off the player's access. Thus, the young man suddenly wakes up in the real world, opening his eyes completely terrified by the situation. But he soon comes face to face with an armed man in sunglasses, who tells him that his life now belonged to him. The invader grabs the boy forcefully by the hair as the young man realizes that the threat from the game was entirely real. With this, he looks to the side and sees his mother fallen on the floor, gravely injured, and this breaks his heart completely. Totally enraged, he ignores the weapon pointed at him and screams, asking if it was that wretched Akira who ordered this. However, the henchman tells him to shut up and then attacks the protagonist without mercy, taking the poor guy out right there. While losing consciousness, the hero laments the betrayal and thinks about how close he was to finally changing his tragic destiny. Then he remembers his grandfather asking him to restore the family's glory and he cries, knowing he was cowardly deceived. He recalls the humiliation they suffered at the hands of a rival group and deeply wishes to have just one more chance to start over. Then the young man slams his hands on the desk and jumps up, swearing to take them all down, catching everyone's attention around him. At this moment, he looks around completely confused and notices that he was inside a high school classroom. The student looks at his own hands, trying to understand the situation since he clearly remembered being eliminated before. With this, a bully approaches demanding money, and the protagonist recognizes the guy who always used to rob him back in school. The young man thinks that all of this was happening because his family was treated as an enemy by everyone. At this, the bully gets annoyed at being ignored and charges at the young man with intense anger. But the protagonist simply blocks the attack, holding the aggressor's arm with absurd ease. With this, he delivers a powerful punch straight to the scoundrel's face, knocking the poor guy backward. Then the hero realizes that his body still remembered the combat movements he used in the game. He stares at his own fist, noticing that his physique had changed even without reaching the maximum awakening. At this moment, a smile appears on the boy's face as he realizes that all his effort wasn't in vain. He celebrates this great advantage, remembering that divine game was able to influence the real world. Because of this, many people became obsessed with the riches and the supreme awakening of level 100. Thus, the strongest players brought their magical abilities into reality, gaining immense power. Because of this, many risked their own lives and entire families in the hopes of changing their destiny. With this, the young man thanks his grandfather for receiving a second chance to do everything differently. But suddenly, the teacher enters the room, accusing the student of bullying his classmate. Then the heavy, set man glares at the boy with contempt and orders him to go straight to the teacher's lounge. There, the educator complains that the young man was destroying the class's harmony by trying to play the tough guy. The student becomes furious, knowing that the teacher used to pretend not to see anything when he was the victim of the extortions. At this moment, he deduces that this corrupt staff member was also bought off by the rival family. In the past, the protagonist's family and their rivals were the two biggest clans in the country and lived in constant conflict. But a tragic airplane accident took away the leaders of his clan, bringing them all to instant ruin. With this, the enemies stole all their possessions, and the boy swears he will rebuild his family at any cost. Then the teacher warns that the boy is no longer a master and tells him to learn how to cooperate with others. With this, the burly man says that the student is nothing but a huge failure with no future. But the hero surges forward with fury, grabbing the guy by the collar and shouting that his family are not losers. At this, the coward becomes very desperate, telling the young man to let him go immediately or he would call security. The boy warns that he knows about the dirty money collected from the rivals and threatens to take away his license if he insults him again. Thus, the hero pushes the staff member into the chair and soon remembers that this was exactly the day of the big launch. At this moment, he thinks that the game is the only hope to rebuild his clan and decides to run straight home. With the memories from his past life, the player knows he can stay far ahead of all the other competitors. Then he swears to be the first to reach the maximum level, feeling that the tragic loss of his mother was his fault. Upon arriving at his humble apartment, the young man decides that this time he would keep his true identity a total secret. At this, the boy tears the collection notices off the door, promising to protect his beloved mother whatever the cost. Entering the residence, he is warmly welcomed by his mother, who greets him with a very gentle smile. The woman happily announces that dinner is already done and calls her son to enjoy the warm food on the table. At this moment, the hero stares at her, holding back his emotions at seeing the most important person in his life safe and sound. With this, the lady notices her son's different expression and quickly asks, very concerned, if he was feeling unwell. During the meal, she asks the young man not to overdo it with his studies and jokes, asking if he liked any girl. The sweet woman smiles, relieved to see the boy so excited, while he mentally swears never to let her be in danger again. Once in his room, the student plans to get ready quickly, because the game would be launched exactly at 7 in the evening. He lies on the bed holding the virtual reality helmet bought with his savings, noting it was an older but useful model. Then the player puts on the large equipment, giving an excited smile as he says it was time for them to work together again. Upon entering the game, the system welcomes him and immediately asks if he wants to choose a class, and the young man refuses. Here we see that most players choose their profession immediately without thinking twice. But the secret phase had already begun because, to enter the special test, it was necessary to reject the first option. With this, the hero knows that the hidden class reaches the supreme rank and soon decides he won't follow the normal path. Then the screen announces the beginning of the endless battle of purgatory, while the warrior smiles, fully prepared. At this moment, the adventurer swears that from then on, he would change his destiny and become a true god of war. Thus, the scenery changes completely, revealing a destroyed place full of burning flames everywhere. Soon, the panel welcomes him to the hidden test and asks the competitor to choose his starting weapon. Without much thought, the young man selects a glowing sword from the menu, stating that this was a very obvious choice. He remembers very well that the choice of initial equipment determines the path of his future secret class. Because of this, he feels that to become a supreme legend, the sharp blade would be his only viable option. Then the boy wields the weapon, confident that this grand item would take him straight to the top of the world. With this, the game generates a customized piece of equipment, tailor-made to match him perfectly. At this, the player recognizes the Heat Haze sword, remembering that this was his second awakening in the past. But this time, the warrior decides to use this great power right from the start to destroy the first challenge. At this moment, the survival trial begins, and a horde of creatures starts to appear in front of the hero. The system warns that infinite waves of purgatory monsters were approaching at high speed. The red-eyed beasts run furiously, growling loudly as they charge toward their new prey. Seeing this, the combatant finds the enemies very amusing and charges forward with a smile on his face, showing no fear. With fast, flaming strikes, he cuts through the monsters and states that, when it comes to being a beast, he easily surpasses them. The hero lets out an excited laugh, claiming he loves all of this, and swears to eliminate all the beasts to achieve maximum completion. Meanwhile, at the game's research center, a staff member reports that someone was already trying to clear the secret challenge. The facility's director is completely shocked and immediately orders them to pull the coordinates of that mysterious player. At this, one of the technicians starts typing rapidly on the holographic keyboard, trying to track the unknown user's signal. But the system reports that the location is undetectable because the boy was using very old equipment that blocked the searches. With this, the boss remembers all the effort it took to create the game and states he wouldn't let an adventurer surpass them using scrap. Then he orders the company's best elite players to enter the server right now to clear this hidden stage. A scientist reinforces the order, saying they are the absolute elite and that failing this extreme challenge was not an option. At this, the team of professional testers confirms a command and quickly prepares to lie down in the building's virtual capsules. The Grand Executive observes the screens, thinking that even though they built that universe, they didn't have total control over it. That wasn't just a digital world, but a living reality where the future of the planet and the salvation of humanity depended. He hopes the anonymous player won't disappoint him, since the pain in the secret test had a very extreme level of realism. If the mental toll passed the limit, their minds would truly overload, and the scene returns to the young man cutting through several enemies. Even injured, the swordsman stands firm and provokes the beasts, asking if that was the best they could do. He gives a mocking smile, guaranteeing that compared to the supreme bosses of his past life, this trash was nothing. With this, the progress reaches 63%, while the warrior continues destroying the horde with great ease. At this, the boy shouts that it still wasn't enough and tells the pathetic insects to keep coming at him. Dominating the battlefield, he orders the creatures to witness up close the birth of the absolute god of war. However, in the real world, one of the elite soldiers suddenly wakes up screaming in despair, saying he was burning alive in pain. Chaos takes over the lab, and the assistant reports that most of the team disconnected even before reaching 20%. At this, the scientist asks if they should lower the difficulty of the game's monsters to make things easier. But the bespectacled director explains that altering the system's code now was impossible because it evolved on its own. Then he states they couldn't interfere with natural selection and could only hope for an elite soldier to survive. With this, a technician warns that the dropout rate hit 95%, leaving only 23 players. At this moment, the boss finds the math strange, stating that according to calculations, there should only be 22 left on the server. Then the assistant realizes that the unknown invading player was still in the simulation and checks his current progress. Everyone in the room goes into absolute shock, seeing that the mysterious boy was already at almost 100% completion. The Grand Executive sweats cold from nervousness and wonders what kind of absurd trick that adventurer was using in the match. Meanwhile, in the virtual world, the protagonist smiles confidently after eliminating several monsters in the fiery setting. He places his large sword on his shoulder and faces the supreme creature there, saying that things have finally gotten interesting. The beast was a dark copy of him, and the young man jokes that the creature had to imitate his look to feel tough. But the big boss doesn't like the joke and glares at him with its red eyes glowing intensely with fury. Next, the shadow monster advances quickly, preparing a powerful strike with its green flaming sword. However, the warrior isn't intimidated and also charges forward, stating he would end that fight using just one attack. With this, the two blades collide violently, generating a massive explosion of colored energy across the entire battlefield. Then the two swordsmen dash past each other at high speed after the exchange of blows, while the young man gives a smile. The boy lands firmly on the ground and feels a large one on his chest after the attack from his evil copy. Even injured, he stands firm and praises the fake creature's attempt while holding his aching rib. But right after, the dark monster's body begins to shatter completely, turning into mere fragments of light. Then the system congratulates the protagonist for completing the secret challenge and starts generating a new, exclusive class for him. The boy receives the Supreme Swordsman class and gains a passive ability that greatly increases his weapon's stats. He smiles, remembering that in his past life, even the strongest classes had a very low power limit. The hero analyzes the panel, realizing that this technique easily surpassed the abilities of a second awakening. With this, he notices that by storing 9 divine swords, he would gain an absurd strength boost in all attributes. The warrior is shocked by the numbers and recognizes that this passive technique was definitely of legendary tier. Then the young man remembers that in that game, classes only went up to the 2nd degree, being impossible to reach the 3rd. But reading the new description, he smiles mischievously, noting he could unlock an unprecedented evolution. Holding his large sword, the adventurer declares the beginning of his clan's rebirth with this new profession. Then the protagonist decides to get a very rare dark attribute weapon hidden in the game's first village. He knew the item was guarded by the strongest entity in the region, who would go crazy upon opening its box. Even so, the boy guarantees he wouldn't stop, because in his second chance, he would play very aggressively. With his body glowing in digital data, the young man enters the main map, swearing he would change his destiny. He observes the sunlit landscape and gives an excited smile, feeling the fresh wind hit his face. At this, the swordsman opens his arms excitedly, celebrating his triumphant return to that virtual world. The system presents the beautiful village of stone castles, located on the remote border of the Flame Kingdom. Walking through the city, the hero feels nostalgic and deduces he needed to look for the game's characters first. But he notices that his title drew too much attention and decides to hide his class so as not to raise suspicions. With this, the panel displays only the basic date of a common warrior, hiding all of his abilities. The young man concludes that this universe was very free, so it would be better to avoid flashy attacks to stay out of trouble. Then the adventurer walks through the busy streets, planning to invade the secret stage and get the divine weapon. At this, he realizes he needs to reach level 5 to activate the quest and quickly decides to look for a basic weapon and skills. Walking through the city, the boy finds a rustic building with a wooden sign showing 2 crossed swords. Then the adventurer stops in front of the place, confirming that this was the home of the great instructor for novice swordsmen. The protagonist opens a door smiling as he remembers the enormous effort it took to get there in his past life. With this, he enters the building's huge hall, walking calmly as his footsteps echo throughout the environment. Inside, a giant muscular man asks if the newcomer was a warrior looking to learn basic skills. Without hesitation, the young man gives a confident smile and confirms the request, demanding that the big guy give him a quest right away. He deduces that initial quests are easy, like delivering letters, and trusts in his victory since he already knows the whole map. But the instructor glares at the boy and guarantees he would give him a technique and a weapon as a reward if he wins the challenge. At this moment, the bearded man makes a very serious expression and soon reveals what the big test for that beginner level would be. The giant stands up, pulling out a heavy sword, and warns that the challenge was to survive his attacks for 30 seconds. Next, the big guy swings his heavy blade, telling the warrior to get out of there if he couldn't handle the task. The boy gulps, noticing that enduring brutal hits for 30 seconds against the Grand Master would be madness. He remembers that the true identity of that man was a very important general from the great kingdom of Radiance. However, the hero recalls that the veteran walked away from the battlefields on his own after eliminating his best friend. At this, the boy evaluates that the instructor was at level 70, which is an absolutely absurd difficulty for a rookie. Noticing the outsider's delay, the bearded soldier shouts impatiently, asking if he was afraid to take the test. The warrior points his large blade at the visitor and tells him to turn around and run away like a coward. But in that very instant, the protagonist gives a highly mischievous smile, guaranteeing that fear wasn't crossing his mind. He pulls out a weapon and warns that 30 seconds would be a breeze, feeling great excitement to start the nostalgic fight. The boy smiles confidently, stating he can't wait to see what will happen once he wins that great battle. At this, the big guy warns that he would hold back during the confrontation and promises to treat his opponent as if he were level 10. With this, the veteran advances quickly with his heavy sword, telling the rookie to try and resist with all his might. Seeing the brute attack approaching swiftly, the young man raises his blade to try and defend himself from the imminent strike. The weapons collide, generating intense sparks as the adventurer realizes his current body wouldn't withstand the direct impact. He puts in a huge physical effort, holding the equipment firmly so as not to be crushed by the opponent's tremendous weight. Pressuring the boy, the instructor gives a slight smile, praising the young man for actually managing to block his sword. Right after, the giant steps back a bit and prepares a new strike, challenging the invader to endure more heavy charges. The heavy blade hits the floor with great violence, destroying the tiles, while the warrior slides backward, dodging the danger. Surprised by the opponent's absurd agility, the bearded master breaks into a genuine smile, acknowledging that the boy was very fast. But without wasting time, the big guy launches a powerful horizontal attack, forcing the swordsman to quickly defend against the slash. Taking advantage of the opening, the veteran unleashes a continuous barrage of fast strikes, asking if his rival could dodge that. The hero grits his teeth in frustration, realizing he would be able to block that entire sequence using an old, rusty weapon. Noticing his young opponent's extreme difficulty, the experienced general gives a sadistic smile, enjoying the assault. With this, one of the attacks hits the boy's guard head-on, pushing him backward while sparks fly from the colliding steel. Despite the immense pressure, the young man keeps his gaze sharp and focused, noting there was still a good chance to counterattack. At this, the skilled warrior takes a huge leap backward, dodging the blade, claiming to have found an opening in the enemy's guard. In mid-air, he smiles, deducing that this military technique prevented a quick posture recovery, leaving the back vulnerable. Looking out of the corner of his eye, the soldier praises the rookie's combat reading but warns that just understanding the theory wouldn't be enough to win. Then the bearded man spins his body quickly with great force, blocking the outsider's aerial attack, showing great ease. The boy is shocked, realizing that the master recovered from that unstable posture instantly to counterattack. The big guy advances with fury, swinging his massive heavy sword at the young man, who tries to dodge that brutal blow. The adventurer blocks with great difficulty, stating that this was expected from a real battlefield technique. Then a huge explosion of energy occurs when the blade collides violently, throwing the boy far away from the impact. The game's holographic panel suddenly appears in the air, announcing that the intense 30-second battle had come to an end. Fallen among the debris, the hero takes a deep breath and complains about losing right at the very end, swearing he wouldn't lose next time. But surprising the rookie, the veteran extends his large hand amicably and calmly declares that the victory belonged to the boy. At this, the bearded man gives a slight smile, praising the swordsman for managing to endure his hits very well for 30 seconds. With this, the protagonist holds the soldier's hand and gets up from the dirty floor, thanking him very much for the great endurance test. The warrior smiles completely confidently and guarantees the master that next time he would show his true power. The experienced fighter says he is looking forward to it and soon hands over the valuable skills scroll promised to the adventurer. Furthermore, he draws a long-rank iron sword, stating he would give that great item as a special bonus prize. The young warrior catches the heavy weapon thrown through the air with agility and soon thanks the giant for that wonderful gift. Excited about his achievement, the hero celebrates the grand prize and announces that he could finally head toward the beginner area. As the young man walks away with his new blade, the general watches with crossed arms, thinking that the boy was very good. The military man regrets breaking his promise on the last counterattack, acknowledging that he unleashed the brute force of a level 20. He deduces that the gift was a sincere apology for the unfair strike, while the boy outside opens the scroll. At this moment, the outsider is left completely speechless, widening his eyes as he focuses on the system's glowing message. The screen displayed the powerful rank of Flame, which was far superior to the normal rank ER that novices usually receive at the start. Then the adventurer smiles, seeing that the effort paid off, because his current conditions already far surpassed those of his past life. The boy runs with his aura of flames, stating he would hunt in the most dangerous lair around to reach level 5 fast. Meanwhile, in the wild area, some novice players take a bad beating, claiming that those monsters were extremely strong. At this, one of the adventurers despairs, trying to push away an angry little squirrel that was attacking him non-stop in the forest. Another novice runs away crying from a cute bunny, noticing that the crowd still wasn't used to the free game's dynamics. Walking through there, the protagonist smiles, deducing that in a few days, the more experienced ones would understand the perfect strategy. But a player warns him that advancing straight ahead would be dangerous and recommends taking down weak enemies to level up first. The young man thanks him for the advice while waving over his shoulder, guaranteeing that his true target was something much larger and brutal. He aimed at the fearsome fire boars hidden in the woods because they were strong and would guarantee a good amount of experience. With this, the hero remembers his past life, planning to wipe up the horde all at once so as not to waste time on easy quests. To throw off skilled opponents, the swordsman focuses his gaze, stating he had no choice but to hunt down larger beasts. Walking calmly through the trees in the remote area, the adventurer stops at the exact hunting spot, feeling the tense atmosphere there. He deduces that the beasts were highly territorial and would attack any intruder entering the area without thinking twice. At this moment, a massive red monster with sharp tusks leaps from the shadows, charging rapidly toward the warrior. The system indicates that a dangerous level 3 adult fire boar had just found the newly arrived invader. The boy readies his sword excitedly, deducing that the beast's brute defense had a large blind spot that was very easy to exploit. Then the swordsman delivers a fast diagonal slash aiming for the soft spots, which was the golden rule to defeat bigger legends. The strike hits head-on, splitting the opponent in half, while the system reports the victory and grants the well-deserved total bonuses. The monster dissolves into digital data across the scenery, while the screen shows 52% progress for the level. Looking back, the hunter gives a highly mischievous smile, ensuring that taking down enemies above the limit yielded many points. At this, the panel displays his advance from level 1, and the protagonist gets excited, knowing he needed just one more takedown like that. Soon, 3 large fire boars appear, running fiercely toward the adventurer across the field. The boy smiles excitedly, provoking the beast by saying they were very nice for showing up so quickly. Then he decides to test his new skill and immediately activates the rank A flames around his large sword. The system confirms the 30% power bonus, and the hero praises the strong flaming effect on the iron weapon. At this, the furious monsters charge swiftly with everything they have right at the swordsman in the middle of the clearing. With his blade glowing, he delivers a fast horizontal slash, challenging the enemies to show all their strength. The powerful flaming strike hits the first boar head-on, taking out the brutal creature with great ease. Next, the warrior spins his body agilely, distributing precise slashes against the other 2 beasts. The fallen monsters dissolve into digital data, while the system reports the victory and the experience bonus. The panel announces that the boy has reached level 3, leaving him very excited with that much smoother start. However, the calm doesn't last long, and soon 2 more brutal enemies appear running to attack the boy by surprise. But the protagonist maintains a very sharp gaze and tells the animals to bring it on, preparing for combat. The adventurer attacks without any mercy, guaranteeing he would turn all those targets into experience points. After some time of pure hunting, the scenery is completely covered by the bodies of dozens of defeated beasts. With his sword on his shoulder, the young man finishes clearing the entire lair, announcing that his next target would be the Great King. At this, a giant monster comes roaring out of the dark cave, and the system announces the arrival of the fearsome level 5 leader. Facing the massive sub-boss, the hero wonders nostalgically how many years it had been since he fought that brutal creature. The young man gives a slight mocking smile, remembering that he suffered a lot to take down that beast in his first life. The giant king charges forward roaring with great anger, while the boy notes that this boss was the terror of novices. Seeing the beast in the reflection of his eyes, the warrior evaluates that the creature's stats guaranteed almost fatal damage. Then the hero concludes that he must not confront the enormous brutal beast head-on under any circumstances. All this because the young adventurer knew very well what he needed to do to beat that great challenge. With this, he dodges the enemy's attack and immediately prepares a powerful counterattack with his flaming sword. At this, the warrior strikes the open mouth of the large red monster with an extremely precise and brutal hit. The swordsman knew perfectly well that the true weak point of that boss was hidden inside its mouth. At this moment, the giant creature takes the fatal hit, being cut in half by the adventurer's intense strength. The Boar King falls defeated, and the system soon announces the victory, notifying that the boy had finally reached level 5. He becomes very excited about the achievement, guaranteeing that he was now ready for Pandora's secret quest. But soon the hero notices some strange lights coming from the body of the massive beast defeated in the middle of that forest. The boy picks up one of the glowing items with his hand, wondering excitedly what kind of mysterious prize that would be. With a big smile on his face, the fighter holds the 2 luminous spheres, waiting to see his rewards. Then the digital panel displays an inventory ring and special armor that granted good resistance against fire. Observing the equipment, the young man concludes that both would be extremely useful items for this start of the adventure. The swordsman smiles at his great luck and decides to test the magic accessory's power, storing the armor right away. Soon he remembers the main quest and deduces that the defeated monster's rib would serve perfectly as a material. Being very fast, the agile warrior uses his strength to extract that valuable bone from the large enemy's carcass. After finishing the extraction, the adventurer holds up the acquired material, stating proudly that everything was ready. He stores the special bone in the ring's inventory and prepares to go after Pandora's incredible secret stage. However, before leaving, the strategist focuses his gaze, ensuring he needed to get one more important little thing. The scene shifts to the house of a famous priestess in the village, since that hidden quest was heavily related to her. The game has main events for each village, and Pandora's secret was a hidden quest that would disappear after being completed. At this, the young man pushes the large wooden door quickly, telling himself that he needed to hurry up a lot. Walking through the place, he finds a priestess calmly cleaning her magic staff in the middle of the library. But the mage notices the intrusion and immediately asks what that stranger wanted there, since he didn't look like an apprentice. The hero tries to ask for the secret quest, noticing that for this, he needed to raise the woman's affection level to 7. However, the system warns that the mage became very irritated by the intrusion, dropping the boy's reputation drastically. Even so, the adventurer gives a very confident smile, guaranteeing there was no reason to worry at all. He knew that in the game's story she was involved in a big problem, and helping out would resolve the lack of affection. With this, the strategist pulls a rare colorful flower from his new magic ring, remembering he grabbed it just for this. Then the swordsman offers the beautiful item to the lady, saying he noticed her problem and was there to help. Seeing the exotic plant, the instructor is completely surprised and recognizes that it was a very rare purple datura. The warrior knew that item was very important in the story because it symbolized a dangerous faction in the region. Since the priestess was a secret member of that group, the young man deduces that his vast knowledge of the village would be useful. By handing over the flower, the outsider planned to trick the woman, making her believe they were both on the same side. The mage trusts the stranger and asks for help to stop a flaming war horse that escaped from the Magic Academy. A new quest screen appears, and the young man accepts it with great excitement, promising he would resolve everything easily. Leaving the place, the protagonist celebrates the perfect execution of the plan, noting that the out-of-control horse was expected. With a hand on his chin, the hunter smiles mischievously, guaranteeing he knew exactly how to tame that great beast. This event required players to cooperate to calm the creature, where the grand winner would get to keep the mount. The boy focuses his gaze, full of determination, swearing that in addition to winning the horse, he would solve the village's problem. The scene cuts to the village's large horse ranch, where several players are gathered at the location. At this, the protagonist smiles confidently, remembering that it had been a good while since his last visit there. Then the system focuses on the quest's main target, revealing a majestic and furious warhorse covered in flames. The hero scratches his cheek, recalling his past life where he took a bad beating and had a huge difficulty against the animal. Walking through the place, the boy spots the horse breeder named Jim, being the character responsible for giving the challenge. With this, the adventurer walks toward the man, deducing that upon completing this, the secret labyrinth would be unlocked. The rancher welcomes the newcomer with a huge smile, asking if he was the warrior who was going to tame the creature. Without hesitation, the swordsman confirms the man's suspicion and quickly says he was there at the village priestess's request. At this moment, the handler celebrates, announcing that the timing was perfect since they now had 8 participants there. The young man notices a knight, a gunslinger, and a mage, remembering that the trio was very famous in his previous playthrough. At this, the boy gives a slight smile, understanding that the grand legends of the past were also gathering in that place. Besides them, the location had the presence of a beast tamer accompanied by a monkey in a very silent robe. The group also had an archer and a priest, confirming the hero's suspicion that the entire old elite was there. He laments because he wasted a lot of time on the hidden stage while the rivals easily leveled up by hunting monsters. However, the protagonist maintains his usual confident pose, guaranteeing that the presence of that elite there would be useless. The other players mock the rookie, stating that guys with no skill and a generic name always act tough for nothing. But the warrior just finds the situation funny, acknowledging that the provocation made sense since they were ignorant of the truth. His fake panel identified him as the king of extras, with the intention of hiding his talents and his identity. Right after, the event's manager shouts, authorizing the entry of the 8 competitors to tame the horse. The great group mission finally begins, with all 8 level 5 participants surrounding the fearsome fire beast. The crowd watches the arena, noting that 7 warriors formed their own groups, while that boy would play entirely alone. With this, the extras mock the solitary adventurer, stating that playing without a team meant a shameful defeat. At this, the knight instructor and captain of the guard enters the arena, catching everyone's attention and proposing a big bet. Then the spectators become quite curious and approach the military man quickly to understand how that would work. The betting panel appears, showing that the old legends had high odds, while the hero had the largest reward. The captain encourages the crowd to bet their copper coins, warning that the winners would receive profits based on the odds. At this moment, the crowd bets heavily on the mage's team, guaranteeing their formation was perfect and would secure the victory. Several players start throwing coins at the famous groups until someone bets 50 coppers all at once on our warrior. The crowd is outraged, looking for the idiot who did that, and stating that betting on the solo guy was throwing money in the trash. But the young protagonist holds up a bag full of coins with a confident smile, stating that he was betting on himself. The competitors stare at the rookie, thinking he was completely crazy for spending so many coins in such a reckless way. With this, the boy tosses the small bag toward the instructor, guaranteeing that no one would know the result until the battle was over. The military man catches the heavy bag, letting out an excited laugh and confirming the high amount bet on the mysterious adventurer. The bald giant glares at the hero, predicting his failure, while the tamer hugs his monkey, mocking the enemy's stupidity. Soon, the duo of the rogue and the priest also belittle the solitary boy, claiming that arrogant guys existed everywhere. However, the protagonist ignores the insults and tells the bunch of novices that it wasn't the time to be talking so much nonsense. At this, the arena shakes with the brutal arrival of the mystical creature, which ran fiercely across the field, spreading flames everywhere. The elite trio advances with the tank drawing the beast's attention, while his allies prepare a lethal strike against its eye. The crowd cheers at the perfect synchronization of the great team, guaranteeing that such a strong attack would eliminate any huge beast. Then the swordsman watches the scene with boredom, stating that this weak strike would never be able to defeat the flaming horse. At this, the untamable beast charges with fury, delivering violent kicks that throw the experienced veterans very far away. With the strong, brutal impact, they all fall to the ground, taking absurd damage without even being able to retaliate against the massive attack. Then the system announces the trio's defeat, and the audience is in total shock, questioning how such strong warriors fell so easily. At this moment, the protagonist gives a slight smile, deducing that the fury of that horse had a special and well-hidden reason. With this, the leader of the other group orders the beast tamer to use his control spells to support their new assault. Quickly, the ally summons a glowing magic circle, focusing all his power to try and paralyze the creature's movements. Thus, the powerful charm hits the target head-on, forcing the fire monster to stay completely still in the middle of the arena. Taking advantage of the big opening, the agile fighter advances swiftly, stating that trapping the beast was the first step of the plan. At this, he takes a huge, calculated leap, landing perfectly on the back of that untamable horse with great precision. Mounted on the creature, the boy boasts about his brilliant strategy, guaranteeing that only an idiot would try to attack the animal head-on. The hero observes everything and praises the combined use of skills but laments, knowing that this tactic wouldn't be enough. However, the wild beast breaks free from the magic in an instant and rears up with total fury, easily throwing the rider into the air. Without wasting time, the flaming horse delivers a devastating kick to the arrogant guy, showing its immense crushing power. The young man's body is thrown against his own ally, and the system decrees that his health bar has reached its end. The crowd falls into great despair, while the digital notice confirms that the tamer was also eliminated from the tough fight. Facing the beast, the swordsman concludes that normal methods would be useless and that possessing hidden information was fundamental there. With this, the spectators begin to murmur, questioning if the mission would fail since the best had ended up defeated. But suddenly, the young adventurer walks calmly to the courtyard and announces loud and clear that the trial would not fail. At this moment, the fearless warrior breaks into an excited smile, stating that his long-awaited turn had finally arrived. Meanwhile, the creature covered in intense flames stares at the new opponent with its red eyes glowing with pure anger. The large flaming horse starts running at high speed, kicking up a lot of dust all over the battlefield. At this, the out-of-control animal neighs with great anger, showing all its fury against the adventurers present there. Then the clever protagonist slides across the ground, stating that the real reason for the creature's suffering was in its ear. With this, the young man prepares a move, guaranteeing he would crush the problem, no matter what it was. Soon, the brave boy charges head-on against the beast, while the rest of the group finds that attitude completely reckless. The audience goes into despair and shouts, warning that the rookie was just throwing his own life away like that. But the agile adventurer dodges the fast attack at the last second, just waiting for the perfect moment to be able to act. At this moment, he holds firmly onto the beast's mane and uses all the momentum of the movement to manage to get on the animal. At this, the hero smiles confidently while men on the huge monster, announcing he was there to save its life. He then pulls the animal's left ear, revealing that this was the hidden secret of its fury and the key to the great challenge. The young man's gaze focuses on a purple insect hidden inside, which was causing all that pain and total lack of control. Very carefully, the hero tries to grab the parasite, telling himself that there was just a little bit more to go to get it. However, the fire horse shakes violently, jumping high in an attempt to buck off its intruder at all costs. The boy mutters about the great difficulty, stating that managing to control that monster was a fight of life or death. With this, he holds the reins with all his strength, so as not to end up being thrown violently onto the dirt floor of the arena. Soon the fighter draws a glowing and mysterious item from his inventory to solve the problem once and for all. He shows a hot tool coated in oil, stating he had prepared that especially for this moment. At this, the warrior tells the wretched parasite to prepare for its end before driving the sharp tool into the target's skin. The precise strike pierces the insect, tearing the thread out of the ear, while the flaming horse feels relief from the pain. Finally, the massive animal loses its strength and falls to the ground completely exhausted after the quick extraction of the little monster. The young man lands softly on the ground, observing the silence of the arena after dominating that great beast. With a confident smile, he holds up the dirty tool, asking who thought he was going to lose. The crowd of spectators goes into total shock, unable to believe the rookie controlled the monster. At this, a bright blue panel suddenly appears, showing that hidden information had been revealed. The system confirms the defeat of the parasitic insect and notifies that the main quest had been updated. He realizes that this great secret reward was unique and very different from what the others received. With this, the hero looks at the small purple bug, knowing that it was the key to a huge secret. A determined look appears on his face, ensuring himself that this time he would never fail. But the young man quickly closes the screen, noticing he wouldn't have time to look at those details now. Then he glares at the cheating duo, remembering that in the past, he had been defeated by those guys. At that very moment, the fake priest uses his staff, casting a powerful support magic on the shooter. The healer orders an immediate attack, warning that his strong spell would only last a few minutes. At this, the archer pulls the string of the glowing bow, mocking our great warrior's low level. A swift arrow full of magical energy is fired mercilessly toward the unsuspecting target. The audience is startled by the sudden plot twist, realizing that the team didn't want to tame the horse. They understand that the cowardly bunch planned to eliminate anyone who did the heavy lifting. The young man insults the dirty enemies, remembering how he was taken by surprise in that old situation. However, the warrior quickly draws a magic sword, stating that the outcome would be very different. With a perfect motion, the swordsman swings the glowing blade, cutting the enemy attack mid-air. He announces with great anger that his fighting skills were much greater than those of that trash. At this, a blue system screen notifies that the boy's body control reached a new phase, greatly increasing his attributes. The shooter is in shock, realizing that splitting his arrow in half required completely superhuman strength. The crowd also can't believe their eyes, questioning if the young man was a grand genius for mastering that technique at level 5. With the sword glowing in his hands, the hero smiles confidently, remembering that his great perfect control was just at the beginning. He knows very well that upon surpassing level 60, it would be totally possible to reach a power level capable of shaking the world. But snapping back to reality, the fearless swordsman announces that first he needed to clean up all that trash from the battle arena. Then he charges at high speed against the archer, guaranteeing he would return the previous attack with the power of his blade. The enemy panics and starts charging a strong multi-shot skill to try and defend against the dangerous advance. At this moment, the healer screams in complete despair, ordering his partner to shoot once and for all to stop the monster. However, the shooter confesses that his hands were shaking too much, preventing him from being able to aim the 3 arrows in the right direction. With this, the hero unleashes a powerful strike of energy, forcing the cheater to give up the useless fight without a second thought. The system announces that the shooter's health reached 0, and his body collapses defeated on the ground under the hero's imposing gaze. The fake priest realizes he is the only one left and starts trembling with fear, holding his small wooden staff tightly. He tries to hit the boy, claiming to be his new opponent, but our protagonist dodges the slow strike with great ease. The young man stares at the enemy with boredom and states that a healer's close combat skills were basically non-existent there. At this, the skilled fighter lands a quick strike with the hilt of his sword, silencing the scared man in the blink of an eye. The crowd cheers at the rookie's incredible fast victory, remembering that the bets against him were at a huge disadvantage. The military man smiles excitedly, declaring the mysterious winner and handing over a huge bag full of copper coins as a reward. Then the great champion stores his glowing weapon back in his inventory, demonstrating much calmness after the long battle. As the dust settles, the experienced young man approaches the massive fire horse, which now looked at him tamely on the field. The young man pets the creature, asking if everything was okay and calling the steed to accompany him. With this, the large animal accepts the petting docilely, and the system recognizes the hero as the mount's new master. Then he rides calmly through the village, planning to accept a secret quest and clear the hidden challenges first. At this, the boy remembers the secret information, knowing that this would yield a totally exclusive, unique reward. The adventurer desires to increase his own combat power with a powerful max-level divine sword of the darkness type. He regrets having lost this item in his past life, but guarantees that this time he would claim the bonus and the rare weapon for himself. Arriving at the mage's house, the woman praises the quest's success, raising her affection level with the brave protagonist. The swordsman realizes the friendship level was already enough to start the next step and decides to reveal the truth. With this, the adventurer shows the small glowing parasitic insect, revealing that it came out of the wild animal's ear. The mysterious girl stares at the small magical creature completely shocked, trying to understand what was happening. At this, the boy celebrates her strong reaction mentally, knowing he just needed to say the right phrase to activate the quest. He states that the hallucinogenic bug caused all the fury, asking for permission to continue investigating the strange case. The hero remembers the frustration of not having managed to get this task before, which was the reason he memorized those words. At this moment, the long-haired woman gets a very serious expression, evaluating that whole situation. Then she asks if the skilled warrior truly wanted to continue following the tracks of that great mystery. Soon the mage breaks into a wide smile, stating that the timing was perfect because she herself had a great clue for the boy. A panel appears offering the chance to investigate a secret labyrinth, and the young man confirms, wanting that divine sword. He gives a small smirk, assuring himself that the answer to that invitation was quite obvious. At this, the confident protagonist accepts the new quest with great joy, activating the tracking of the grand challenge in the system. The woman wishes him good luck on the dangerous journey, while the hero turns his back and sets off toward his new destination. The mysterious mage's expression changes, warning that anyone who interfered in the sacred mission deserved to perish in that terrible labyrinth. With this, she says she needed to report the discovery of the purple bug immediately to dominate that village very soon. At this, the hero walks away and thinks that walking to the labyrinth would be a lot of work since it was located outside the village. Then the young warrior puts his fingers to his mouth, giving a very loud whistle to call his new, powerful magic mount. The majestic fire horse appears quickly while the boy mounts it, saying a noble warrior needed something like this. The people around are amazed by the flaming beast, finding incredible and questioning if it was some paid item. The clever player smiles, remembering that you couldn't get strong in that universe just by paying, as there wasn't even a store there. With this, he rides at high speed, stating that this great revolutionary game was like a real, different world. Soon the adventurer arrives at the peaceful village's large east gate, knowing that outside lay the dangerous open-world area. The boy mentally explains that every small village in that game was surrounded by two different types of exploration areas. One of them was the common zone where warriors hunted monsters just to level up, without being able to hurt their allies. But out in the large free area, there were terrifying beasts, and cruel players could take each other down freely without any mercy. The danger level of this second place was much higher compared to the other, but the good rewards were also massive. At this, he remembers that by defeating another fighter, it was totally possible to steal and loot all the person's valuable resources. And on top of that, the powerful beast yielded rare items, making spawning in that chaotic place very risky. However, the gate guard blocks the boy's path, warning that outside was too dangerous for such a weak beginner. A red-haired guy mocks the situation, calling the rookie an idiot and stating that no one left there before level 10. The arrogant man continues insulting the young man, wanting to know how someone so uninformed had managed to get a beautiful horse. But the fearless swordsman doesn't even care about the enemy's mean comments and just repeats the phrase about not being able to leave. With this, he holds a mysterious bag full of resources, warning that he possessed unique secrets kept from a past life. The young warrior offers the small bag full of money, asking very politely for the guards to open the gate. The other players laugh at that attempt, thinking the watchman would attack the rookie because of that bribe. But the soldier opens the bag and gets a huge scare seeing 100 copper coins shining in his own hands. Then the guards quickly open the passage, while the boy advances with his beast, stating that this world was quite real. He remembers with a smile that the rules of reality worked well there, which was the reason he had bet everything earlier. At this, the other adventurers are shocked by the boy's wealth, wanting to know how he was so advanced in the game. With this, the experienced player rides through the forest, stating that bribing guards was always the easiest way. It would even be possible to force an exit, but the hero warns he needed to be careful with the looters in that free area. Soon a confident smile appears on his face, imagining which unlucky warrior would try to attack him first. At this moment, two cruel thugs observe our protagonist, thinking a level 5 rookie would be easy prey. The criminals advance at high speed, warning that hunting other players yield a lot of experience and good resources. At this, the duo runs toward the target, celebrating that the rider had just fallen right into their trap. However, the boy stops the mount right before the spikes, frustrating the enemies who realize they had just been fooled. The hero glares at those rogues with a deadly look, realizing he only needed one nade to deceive the trash. Then a dark smile takes over the brave swordsman's face, swearing he would take those guys down. But the big guys start laughing hard, asking how a lower-level opponent could possibly beat both of them. With his large sword in hand, our protagonist just answers that the enemies wouldn't know the result without fighting. In that instant, he agilely jumps off the fire horse, asking the creature to be a good girl and wait quietly there. The fighter points his blade, promising that right after eliminating those opponents, they would ride around there a lot more. The masked man gets irritated by this immense arrogance and draws his weapon, wanting to show the true difference in strength between them. The masked thief holds his dagger with a mocking smile, asking if the target didn't know that thieves were stronger. At this, the looter duo quickly separates, advancing against the boy to attack at the same time from both sides. The hero agrees that this class has an advantage because their first skill is a very versatile and fast dash. But the protagonist activates his glowing sword, warning that he started with a strong skill and would win very easily. The thief stares at the warrior completely scared, wanting to know what kind of crazy power that was. Then the big guy advances with his green blade, thinking it impossible for a swordsman to start with fire magic. With this, the leader backs off and carefully watches the scene, deciding to let his partner attack first to test the target's strength. Soon the henchman advances with great speed, guaranteeing that a simple warrior would never beat a thief's quickness. But the young man blocks the fast strike with great ease, agreeing that his class truly was slower in combat. At this moment, he violently twists the chubby guy's arm, warning that the big difference here was physical strength. At this, the swordsman swings his flaming blade while the enemy mocks him, saying that weak attack wouldn't hurt. However, the skilled fighter delivers a strike of pure energy, guaranteeing that taking down trash like him required no effort. The purple magic cuts the looter's body with a devastating impact, drawing a scream of pain from that coward. With this, the system announces the great victory, yielding 10 more fame points to the protagonist for eliminating the criminal. Then the hero points the glowing weapon at the other thug, telling him to stop stalling and come to fight already. A mocking smile appears on his face, asking if the great master would be even weaker than his own helper. The green-haired guy gets angry at the harsh words and insults the rookie before preparing for the next combat. He attacks furiously, claiming to be level 6 and aiming straight for the boy's neck to finish it with a single blow. But the powerful adventurer dodges that dangerous charge very quickly, leaving only an invisible trail behind. At this, the system screen confirms the stat gain, while the young man mocks the knave plan and celebrates the great bonus. The criminal attacks with fury, using his fast dash skill directly against the grand warrior. With this, the thief charges with everything and goes straight past the target, thinking he had landed a fatal blow. But the masked thug gets a massive scare upon noticing that the agile swordsman was already behind his back. At this, the protagonist lands a powerful blow on the enemy's back, causing huge damage right away. The looter takes a lot of damage, remaining in complete shock, claiming it was impossible to dodge that strong attack. Then the hero smiles calmly, explaining that he didn't dodge and merely increased his speed to get out of the way. He finishes the opponent off, guaranteeing that a critical hit would never work if the strike didn't hit the target. Soon the system announces the victory, notifying that the boy's fame went up and yielded a new stat title. The young man celebrates this great advantage of taking down criminals, because gaining extra stats would be an excellent thing. With this, he asks to hide the new title and focuses on gathering the scattered items from the defeated enemy. He remembers that taking down an evil player caused their entire inventory to drop to the ground as punishment. Observing the spoils of that battle, the brave adventurer notices a mysterious paper rolled up on the ground. At this, the warrior picks up the old map in his hands while drinking a potion and feels that this was quite familiar. A big smile appears on his face upon realizing he had just gotten a beautiful treasure map. But the hero whistles, calling the beast, and warns he had no time to make detours from his main goal. The beast appears quickly while the boy throws a useless item into the bushes, stating his inventory space was full. Then he stores the enemy daggers, stating he would sell the bad weapons to get money in the village. With his small inventory completely full, the protagonist mounts the animal, ordering it to run. The agile rider advances through the forest very excited and focused to reach the mysterious labyrinth quickly. Soon we can see the massive stone doors of the Great Challenge being heavily guarded by a guardian. Finally, the young man arrives at the exact location, stopping his fire horse in front of the huge armored knight. He gets off the mount, remembering that rank S divine swords were incredibly rare in that entire world. At this, a big smile appears on his face because he never managed to get one in his past life, even feeling chills. But before being able to enter the labyrinth, he knew very well he needed to get past that powerful guard. At this moment, the knight stands up, asking if the adventurer sought to enter Pandora's great labyrinth. The fearless young man confirms his intention to enter the place and asks what he needed to do to pass through there. Then the corrupted warrior points his large sword, warning that the only way to enter was by defeating him. The system orders him to defeat the enemy, and the hero understands he couldn't let his guard down against the village's greatest fighter. The brave fighter remembers that 50 years ago, that guard defeated 300 invaders single-handedly in a battle. At that time, the village's former chief ordered the honorable warrior to protect the labyrinth's entrance forever. Since then, he never left that place, and his body withstood time, kept alive only by sheer willpower. Our protagonist admires the incredible loyalty of that knight who sacrificed his entire life for the mission. But he points his glowing sword, stating it was time to set him free, because living like that must be horrible. With this, the skilled fighter holds his weapon firmly, preparing to start the intense and dangerous combat. The adventurer calls the opponent a noble knight, promising he would free him from all that great torment. The huge armored guardian praises the young challenger's formidable fighting spirit as he gets ready to fight. However, the beast advances relentlessly, warning that the boy would never pass through that door without beating him first. The swordsman blocks the heavy strike with his weapon, feeling the ancient soldier's massive brute strength in that impact. A determined look appears on the boy's face, calling the enemy to exchange blows with great confidence. At this moment, the corrupted knight unleashes a powerful triple-slash skill against the village's rookie. The boy smiles confidently, surprised the warrior could still use such strong techniques even in that decayed state. With this, the adventurer readies his own weapon while an intense purple magic flame begins to cover the blade. Then he uses his flaming skill to block the guardian's heavy attack, creating sparks all over the battlefield. At this, the absurd impact of the blow ends up pushing the old soldier backward, making him slide across the labyrinth as dirt. The young swordsman praises his opponent's strength, stating that fighting someone so capable was very fun. But the armored knight also recognizes the young man's worth, declaring that he was an adversary worthy of great respect. At this moment, the creature positions itself, holding its rusty sword tightly, preparing to launch its best attack. The monster warns it would use all its power from that moment on, advancing swiftly with much fury against the invader. The hero focuses his gaze, remembering that in his past life, that enemy's technique was very famous and feared among players. Because even being just a ruined warrior, he possessed a divine ability capable of taking down several people at once. With this, the young man remembers that the strike's power increased according to the user's conviction, scaring everyone who tried to enter there. At this, the guardian's eyes glow intensely in a red shade, showing all of his immense will to fight. Then the armored opponent unleashes his legendary slashing skill, creating a gigantic wave of energy through the air. But our fearless adventurer doesn't back down, wanting to see up close the true strength of that strike that defeated so many heroes. And soon he swings his magic blade with extreme force, calling the enemy to the decisive combat without a single ounce of fear. At this moment, the young warrior shouts, releasing all his inner power, focusing entirely on breaking the adversary's attack. However, the collision of the two energies generates a massive explosion that ends up throwing the skilled young man's body into the air. The boy grits his teeth while still in mid-air, realizing in shock that his strong flaming charge had been stopped by the enemy. And suddenly, the monster's aura reaches the boy's body, causing a quick wound on his chest during the fall. With this, the injured hero acknowledges the absurd level of strength of that feared divine technique that managed to hit him head-on. The protagonist smiles excitedly, realizing that this was the true power of the enemy's famous slashing attack. At this, the huge armored guardian stands firm in front of the large door, holding his heavy rusty sword. The young adventurer praises the monster's strength, stating that this resilience made him worthy of being defeated there. But the soldier warns he would open the way, telling the invader to give up already, promising to spare the boy's life. However, the swordsman refuses the offer, saying he hasn't lost yet and that seeking strong opponents was his goal. Then the old knight calls the boy for another round, claiming to have already figured out all the rookie's techniques. The hero gives a mocking smile, doubting that claim with a lot of confidence in his own abilities. At this moment, the fighter decides to unleash his true power, revealing his supreme sword master class. With this, an exclusive devotion talent is activated, increasing all of the warrior's attributes by 200%. The armored guardian notices the rival's great energy boost, feeling his own fighting spirit burn. Thus, the fearless boy advances at high speed against the target, warning that the real confrontation would start now. The adventurer shows great excitement during the intense charge, getting more and more thrilled about the combat. He then attacks the opponent with a heavy flaming strike, promising to free the old soul from all that suffering. The experienced soldier defends the strong collision, admiring the incredible determination to win that the young man displayed. At this, the armored beast remembers its past, realizing the hero's aura was just like his in his youth. With this, old memories take over the night, making the enormous passion from those ancient battles awaken. The nostalgic feeling courses through every inch of that man's body, filling his soul with very pure energy. In that exact moment, the creature feels alive again, filling its flesh once more with the spirit of a fighter. The corrupted opponent stares at the skilled challenger with great pride, recognizing the rookie as a true rival. Finally, the two warriors exchange powerful blows, fighting for their own convictions without any fear of the end. The boy admires his rival, stating that the monster was the true definition of a respectable warrior. With the impact of the strike, the armored soldier is pushed backward, sliding across the dirt of that immense labyrinth. Then the young adventurer advances quickly with his flaming blade, ready to continue the intense battle. He activates a perfect grip skill, challenging the enemy to use his best attack to decide everything. At this, the old knight accepts the boy's challenge, raising his heavy rusty sword for the final strike. Our hero concentrates all his magic energy in his eyes, showing he is completely focused on victory. With this, the skilled fighter jumps toward the target, calling the creature to the grand final clash between the two. But the powerful guardian doesn't back down, unleashing his legendary divine slashing technique, creating a massive wave of power. The fearless swordsman defends the heavy charge, using his entire aura to resist the feared enemy attack. At this moment, the heavy exchange of blows generates a gigantic explosion of energy that covers the entire battlefield. When the dust settles, the figure of the old combatant stands firm in the middle of the scenery after the brutal confrontation. However, the victorious protagonist smiles, covered in scratches, declaring he had finally won that difficult duel. The experienced soldier kneels weakly, thanking the boy for providing such an incredible and fair fight. He states that thanks to the hero, he could finally pass on in peace with his warrior's honor, completely intact. At this, the boy sheathes his weapon, saying he only did what was natural for someone who walks the path of swords. But suddenly, a system panel reveals that the fighter achieved maximum affection from that defeated boss. The adventurer is quite shocked to see he had won the chance to learn his rival's strongest technique. He drinks a healing potion, recognizing that in his past life, he had never heard of that absurd ability. With this, the monster's body turns into light, clearing the passage while the boy gains a lot of experience, leveling up. Finally, the proud protagonist pays one last tribute, promising to carry the knight's invincible will. The young warrior announces that the real journey was starting now, asking the system to hide his real class. With this, he enters the labyrinth, noting that the quest to investigate and reach the central core had begun. At this, the adventurer equips his magic fire bracer, fully prepared to clear the first area. At this moment, a confident smile appears on the boy's face upon hearing strange noises coming from the darkness ahead. Then a giant horde of armed goblins appears out of nowhere, completely blocking our skilled hero's path. The green monster growls angrily, glaring at the invader while a strong dark energy begins to appear in the air. But the swordsman toys with the welcoming committee, activating his powerful blue flame to return the huge favor. He advances, cutting down the enemies with several very fast and destructive attacks, thankful for all the experience. With every strike, more creatures fall easily, proving that this huge harvest of power was a success. The fearless fighter smiles excitedly, calculating that at this insane pace, he would manage to level up in no time. After clearing the first area effortlessly, the winner sheathes his weapon, getting ready to enter the intermediate floor. He remembers that many gave up there, because the monsters became absurdly strong guarding the supreme divine sword. But the traveler knows that having the knowledge from his past life was the biggest cheat of all, since he knew the tricks. At this, he applies the labyrinth's secret technique, which consisted of walking 4 steps forward and 1 step back. After walking for some time, the young man finally reaches the labyrinth's flowery central core without any major problems. The hero stares in awe at the immense landscape full of purple plants, mourning that the real challenge was going to start now. Lying on a luxurious sofa appears Pandora, the master of the labyrinth, shocked that a human managed to get this far alive. The boy advances, drawing a large sword, stating that behind that beauty, she was just a very evil witch. The seductive mage smiles provocatively, praising the boy's looks and asking if this was how he treated a lady. But our fearless protagonist counters her charm with a lot of mockery, stating she was beautiful 50 years ago. He claims she has now been reduced to a monster, and that the soldier's true mission given 50 years ago was to suppress the witch sealed in that labyrinth, who had been exiled from the great village by the former chief. Because she was an evil witch who used terrifying dark magic, being the root of all the evil that plagued that place. At this, the mage lets out a loud laugh, stating she expected no less from a human who managed to get this far. Then she assumes her true, terrifying demonic form, wondering what kind of reward she would give him. With this, the creature suggests an end filled with absolute despair while holding a strange magic cube in her hands. The evil monster laughs maniacally, drawing a long dark sword, revealing herself to be the level 10 boss of that area. The adventurer stares at the grand weapon in awe, recognizing that this was the famous sword he was looking for so much. With this, the young man charges forward at high speed, very happy to find his first-class S-Divine weapon so quickly. He announces he would take the blade, but the beast blocks the strike, offended that a mere human would try to steal her treasure. At this moment, the witch tells the boy to know his place, launching an absurd beam of purple energy at him. The swordsman is pushed backward by the attack's force, praising the great power of a level 10 creature like that. He smiles confidently, confessing that this kind of insane strength was enough to give even him the chills. But the area boss glares at the invader, stating that despite his words, he didn't seem scared of her at all. Then she decides to show true terror, launching a rain of fast slashes, making our hero try to back off. The boy notes the disadvantage in close combat because the enemy's long arms and weapon gave an insane reach to the strikes. At this moment, the monster takes advantage of the opening and lands a surprise attack with her long tail, disarming the fighter. The adventurer panics upon seeing his blade fall far away in the middle of that flower field, leaving him totally defenseless. With this, the witch mocks the chatty young man while landing a heavy blow head on, greatly reducing the boy's health. The impact makes the injured hero get thrown brutally against the stone floor, losing almost all his energy. The evil witch announces the battle was already over, calling the adventurer a very insolent and greedy boy. But the hero gets up from the rubble, picking up his empty scabbard from the ground, warning they would soon see the grand finale. At this moment, the monster lets out a laugh, mocking the human for trying to take her down using only a useless piece of wood. Then the system activates the perfect grip while the warrior prepares a strike to seal the creature for 50 years. At this, the demonic beast widens her eyes, completely shocked upon recognizing her adversary's powerful skill. Full of fear, the boss advances quickly toward the boy, determined to finish off the invader before he launches the attack. However, the swordsman smiles confidently, surrounded by a magic aura, warning that attempting to defend was useless. With this, the young fighter unleashes all his incredible power, casting the feared unparalleled slash of the burning soul into the combat. He focuses his gaze, putting all the hatred and despair from his past life into that strike to change his tragic destiny.